Hi there folks, welcome back to Mossy Roots Farm. When I look at things, I see the positives and the negatives. I don't heavily weight the positives and I don't heavily weight the negatives, but I do realize that your farm and my farm are going to be different because of size, animals, usage, slope, all that good stuff. So this bale grazing, and as you see in the background, that's my style of bale grazing, and we'll discuss how this differs. This style of bale grazing has a lot more of a gap in between the round bales. This is roughly 95 feet. 95 feet is what I was told needs to be your center spacing for your bale grazing. The reason that I disagree with that is because of many things that I actually have written down here. One of the negatives to this style of bale grazing is it requires more land for the same number of round bales. I think in a previous video I said that I packed, what did I say, 42, let's just say 42 round bales in a half-acre section. That's how many I had over there. And with this method, I actually did a little bit of math. Roughly 32 round bales is what I could fit over the entire part of my farm that has fence currently. So I go from 42 to 32 if I go to this method. So the next thing is if right here, let's assume this black tote, this black tub is a round bale. Look at all the grasses in the area. Look at all the grass between this tub and that white bucket. If I let my cows in here, let's say I have this all fenced off, and let's say that I fence it off right in the middle, in between this white bucket and this black bucket here, let's say I fenced it off. Well, what do you think the cows are gonna do? If I have a round bale right where that white bucket is, and let's say I'm fencing them off from the black bucket, what do you think they're gonna do with all this grass in between here? Just the grass in between me and the white bucket. They're gonna start eating it. So you have to be careful if you're gonna do this method that you don't overgraze the grass. And then from my experience, especially with those round bales up there, half or 3/4 of the cows don't even care about the round bale because they see this green or brown grass and they go after it like crazy. So you have to be careful because they will eat your fall stockpile, especially if you get them in too early. And I don't mean too early as in like there's a magic time frame. I'm just talking if your plan was to fall stockpile graze this and instead you're doing round bale grazing, they're going to eat all your stockpile. Where my method of a sacrifice paddock or a sacrifice feedlot, I have all of this fall growth that they can eat and that I can leave behind to help with next year's growth. And that brings me into the next thing that I am not a huge fan of with this style of bale grazing. Depending on the time of year, you're gonna hurt your regrowth. Is if I don't have enough acres to graze stockpile into, what was it this year? December, January time is about when we stopped getting warm enough weather for grass to grow. Side note, grass doesn't grow based on sunlight, it grows based on soil temperatures. That means that until about December, November time, this grass was still growing. Very slowly, but it was still growing. So if I had to feed hay, let's just assume I wanted to feed the round bale down there by the barn, and I fenced it off fairly tight. Well, now there's gonna be a lot of animal impact in a small area. The whole point of this grazing is so that there's a animal impact over a larger area and you don't muck up your field like I have over here with my bale grazing. The other thing that can be a bother is if it's super duper wet or you have a low-lying area. You know, if you have, let's just take for example, down there by the barn, you can see that it's a lower lying area, it's kind of flat and it stays wet. You would have to avoid grazing the round bale or avoid grazing that section if you had a low area and it was really wet fall time, because you would pug up the ground. I understand that that's part of why you go to this system is to not pug up the ground, which is also why I say this style of grazing is not for everybody, because you physically cannot have the perfect land for every style of grazing. So the other thing is this is supposed to be good for wet weather. The reason it's supposed to be good for wet weather is you've got cows wandering from the bucket halfway up or all the way up to this round bale that's right behind me and all the way over, because about where those round bales are is about 95 feet. So this whole section they would have for one day of grazing. Now that means that the cows are going to be wandering through all of it, but they still have a central location that they need to eat a round bale at. And if you're like me and you have a smaller number of animals, one of these round bales lasts me 3 days. So for 3 straight days, these cows are going to be in the same location. These cows are going to be grazing from the same round bale, and these cows are not going to be able to keep from pugging up the wet ground. Because as you see over here, 3 days in the same spot results in mud. So this really works for bigger herds, which I do not have. But as we have discussed, the bigger your herd, the more your hay needs, the more ground you need. This might be the best for hay fields, this style of grazing, and here's why I say that. If you do not third crop, fourth crop your hay, and you just round bale graze like I am doing, then you might be all right, because here, let's go to a nice thick thatchy spot. But this is going to be able to handle more animal impact. So this here, very, very thick, you know, I mean, it is short because we grazed it, so it is shorter than what you would normally see, but it's a very thick patch. And it's going to be able to handle an animal hoof print a lot better, because as it puts its foot down, like my knuckles here, it's going to be able to push on a lot of this grass, and it could technically increase their hoof size by a little bit. It's not going to be much, but a little bit. Also, hay fields generally have really well-established root bases and a lot of roots all the way around the plants, because it's generally a hay field, that you might be able to get away with something like this. It might be a little bit easier to do in a hay field. In a pasture, I'm not so sure. Especially if you do it in a hay field, you wouldn't worry so much about regrowth because, well, let's say you normally do a first cut in May. Well, then just do a first cut in June, or do a first cut in July. Maybe you only get one cutting out of your hay field that year and let the cows graze it for a second or third cutting, or a fall grazing. That's what I meant to say. That's another thing that would be great with this. The one problem I do see is that, again, you let your cows up in here and graze. They're going to go after this really great looking green stuff. They are not going to go after a round bale. So what they're going to do is they're going to graze it to the dirt. Now I'm making this as an assumption because I've never done this style before, but from my experience with grazing over here, they will eat these grasses down to the dirt, similar to how this looks, well before they touch that round bale. And yes, I know this pasture needs work. That is way too low for a pasture, but that's part of what I'm trying to do, is improve things. Once you've eaten it to the dirt, then you worry about spring runoff. So with spring runoff, you have to be very careful, because if you get too much snow or too much rain and not enough grass holding it on, all of your good, fantastic manure goes right down the hill. You know, this grass here is not very tall, but it will help keep some of that intact. And if, like I showed in some of these, here we go, here's a little dirt patch. This dirt could technically erode because there is nothing keeping it right there. So that's another thing that I am not a super huge fan of with this style of grazing. Again, not saying you can't do it. I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm saying for a smaller size farm like me, it does not work. Mathematically, physically, whatever you want to claim, it does not work on smaller farms with smaller acreages and this large number of cows. Now, if maybe I had 2 cows, it might work. But again, if I had 2 cows, I wouldn't need round bales because I could graze grass the entire fall, entire winter. All right, so as you see here, the pink is currently my farm. Now, it might be a little difficult to see. Here, let's try that. So the top right corner is orange because that is a future expansion that I plan on doing. And the bottom jigsaw puzzle looking piece is my current farm layout. All of those black dots are round bales that don't actually belong there because I didn't do math correctly. And all of those pink circles are round bales that should be there according to math. Now, I may have done math wrong, and sorry about that. Right here where my thumb is, this middle row, like right here, starting here all the way over to the right, probably should not be there. Because again, the math doesn't math and I wasn't paying attention. And same with probably these two over here. Honestly, they probably don't math out either, but again, it's just a rough sketch. So with all of these round bales, and I show you here, that is 32 round bales for 5 acres. And what is in pink is 5 acres. The orange is 2.5 acres. So when I expand my farm by 2.5 acres, that means I could put 42 round bales and I would have about 7.5 acres with the orange piece added into my farm. So I fed 42 round bales in half an acre. And according to this math, it would take me 7.5 acres to feed 42 round bales. So I don't see this as being very effective for a smaller farmer. I don't see this method as being very effective for someone who has 15 cows and only 5 acres. Now again, yes, technically, oh, that's too many cows per acre, but not all 15 of those are full grown. I currently have 4 babies, and actually one of them just put itself back into the head chute, so I'm going to have to go save that here in a minute. This is just going to be difficult altogether because, again, here, let me see if I can set this down so that I can show you guys with my finger here. It's going to be difficult because I have a creek running here, so I can't put any round bales in this corner. This technically, right here, this round bale, is technically in the location where it could be and should be, but it's a very wet area, so I couldn't put a round bale there. Excuse me. These along this fence line are also in a very wet area, so I would not want to put round bales there. So the realistic usable for my farm is probably closer to 25 acre or 25 round bales. Actually, probably closer to 20 if we count these ones as not being in there, because that's what, 5 of them, 7 of them. So realistically, to do this 110% correct, according to this person, I would only be able to put 20 round bales on my farm, let's just say, according to the acreage that I have and the spacing that he says. Now and again, when you look at his YouTube videos, when you hear this gentleman talk, his farm looks amazing. It looks like this. You know, you see green grass. You see no mud. You see beautiful cows, and honestly, I don't know if they're any heavier than mine, so I don't know if a weight is really going to affect anything or not in that regard. Beautiful. It looks awesome. But when I look up his farm, between him and his relatives, he has about 100 acres at his disposal. Now, I don't know how many cows he has. He may only have 20 cows. But if I had 100 acres at my disposal, sure, I could do the same thing. And in a previous YouTube video, I said, farming is so much easier if you just have more land. If I were to just have 1,000 acres, heck, I'd never need to feed a round bale a day in my life. That's what I think makes this channel stand apart, is the fact that I don't just sit here and blindly believe everything everyone tells me. I don't sit here and blindly tell you guys that this is the only way or the best way to do something, because I realize some of you are going to have 100 acres at your disposal. Some of you are going to have 100 acres at your disposal, and you're going to have, let's say, a 40 cow herd, and 40 of those acres is going to be pasture. If I had an acre of pasture for every cow I have here, I probably would not need as many round bales. Actually, I know I wouldn't need as many round bales, because a cow per acre is what they say in my area is what your holding capacity is. That's something that we have to consider. More land, less problems. And like I say, I am not saying that this is a bad thing. I am not saying this is a bad method. And here, we'll look at the very top. So I have a 10-acre section up here that you guys are seeing, roughly 10 acres. And just doing basic math, that gives me 49 round bales for 10 acres. Now, that's probably not actual because I literally just divided by 95 feet because that's the spacing I was told to try. And of course, that's only a 95-foot center, so if you have, like, I think it came out to like 6.9, so I just put 7 down. So one of the centers would be like 90 feet or something, just because that's what I would do. That's why I think that whatever you guys choose to do with your farm should be your own decision. You should not listen to me or others on YouTube because, first of all, we do what's best for our farm. We don't do what's best for your farm. And I don't mean that I'm out here trying to propose that you guys go out and destroy your farm, and I'm not suggesting anything of the sort. I'm merely stating a fact that you guys should consider your own farm's needs when you're looking at things like rotational grazing, like bale grazing, like bale unrolling. You know, I have said in previous videos I cannot unroll because I don't have enough acres in my physical distance for a round bale, how wide it is, so I guess it'd technically be this direction. How wide it is, I would go from my entire property width with all of the round bales that I use. That's why I don't unroll hay. As you guys see here, this is a mud pit. I'm not suggesting to you guys that I'm the world's best grazer. I'm not suggesting to you guys that you should follow my advice and not listen to this gentleman who probably has more years experience of grazing than I do, because clearly I'm doing something wrong if this is what my land looks like, right? And his land when he grazes looks like what's over here. I'm merely suggesting that a lot of farmers have gotten away from the fact that they started small and got big, or they were born into a large farm. I know several people that were born into very large farms. The day they were born is the day they inherited 10,000 acres that they could farm in Montana. I think that's where they're at. The day they were born, they inherited 2,500 acres that they could farm in Minnesota. The day they were born, they inherited however many hog barns in Iowa. Some people just get a really good hand at birth. Some people have to work for it. And I think a lot of people have forgotten that fact, that not everyone just pops up and says, hey, I'm going to have a 100-acre farm, I'm going to have 40 cows, and I'm going to have a very profitable business. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys on the next one.